What's going on, everybody? Welcome once again to Weed's Weekly Wrap and happy Eclipse Day. Hopefully you got the opportunity to check it out. It was pretty cool. Unfortunately, it was pretty overcasty here in Austin, Texas, so didn't get to see the full sun or anything like that, at least from where I was. But hey, what a cool event. So hopefully you got to take advantage of that. So let's just dive right in. Again, every week I come at you, talk about this past week, talk about the upcoming week, give you some random thoughts. And today we're going to talk about NAR Sense. So I want to dive into that just very lightly to kind of give my thoughts on where we're currently at and what to kind of look out for. But let's just go right into what we saw last week, and ouch is all I can say, right? As we alluded to going into that week, I mentioned that jobs, if you like them, they were going to be the highlight of the week, and they did not disappoint. And let's take a step back, right? With job creation, it's great for GDP. It's great for the overall U.S. economy. You have wages increasing ever so slightly. They're not keeping pace with inflation, of course, but again, that's on the rise. Putting people in jobs and having more people in the workforce and having a lower unemployment rate is a great thing for the overall U.S. economy. Unfortunately for us in the real estate space and in the environment we're in, where you have that coupled with high inflation and government spending because they can't control themselves, that leads to inflation. And with more job creation and more money flowing through the system, that creates a bigger problem. And the result is going to be that not anytime soon is the Fed going to make an adjustment to the Fed funds rate. I think that was painted pretty clear last week with that jobs report. I think that kind of solidified that although the Fed tried to indicate that jobs was a secondary indicator for any type of potential future Fed funds rate adjustment, I think it clearly stipulated by the number as far as how much it drastically beat forecasts that not anytime soon are we going to see really any adjustment for the Fed other than altered language. I think they now are pushing out, and obviously traders are pushing out. We're not really going to see, the number has decreased for how many people believe we'll see any change in direction in the June meeting. They're now to July, which is what I've been preaching since last year. And now I'm on board with September, which we're going to touch on. The other thing is, are we going to get to the point where we are over 4.5% as far as a ceiling for the 10-year Treasury? We're already over 4.4. Depending on the inflation data this week, that could present a real problem for where we're going to be as far as interest rates. We're now talking that we're over 7% for the average 30-year fixed. So we want to really keep a close eye on that of where traders think this is going to go. And I believe earlier this week, they're going to be pushing that ceiling in anticipation that inflation is going to come in against us. Consumer sentiment is going to come in against us. And therefore, they believe that there is no clear ending in sight with regards to what the Fed is going to do. And there's quite possibly a potential for an increase, which I'm going to touch on. So as we head into this week, unfortunately, there's no rest for the weary. We are right back at it. We get a slight pause on Monday. We get a slight pause on Tuesday with regards to data, but we get inflationary heavy and we have consumer sentiment on Friday, CPI, PPI. These are some big numbers that the Fed is going to look at, traders are going to look at for where the Fed policy is going to be going in the future. And what I think is going to happen is that regardless of how the data set comes out, they are going to wait, that being they, the Fed, is going to wait to now see what May is going to bring. There's a gap here, as I alluded to last time when I laid out when those Fed meetings were, where they can kind of pause. They can kind of say, rely on a lot of language, maybe verbiage change for the direction that they're thinking where they're going to go with the Fed funds rate. But the reality is they have a slight pause here between Fed meetings where they can kind of step back and say, okay, why don't we wait to May? Let's see if we get the same readings. Maybe it changes, and then we can adjust basically our rhetoric and where we believe that we're going to see the Fed funds rate moving forward. And I'm here to say first and foremost that if we see another month with the correction to what the jobs report was come May, and we see another high jobs report, we see inflation this week continuously, persistently sticky, and we see it again in May. And if it goes above forecast by anything more than 0.1, we are going to see a Fed funds rate increase. And I'm not trying to be the bearer of bad news. My job is to educate you so that you can do a better job with your client. Prepare them for what's coming. It doesn't need to be a bad thing. It just needs to be, how am I going to attack it? If I'm on the buyer or selling side, how do I want to approach it? So you want to be very cautious with that and be very alert of what's going on. But again, I don't think you're going to see much change. I think you're going to see that ceiling maybe pushed a little bit. I think you're now going to see a floor of maybe 4.3, depending on where this data comes in. And we're going to be in this holding pattern until that May data set comes out, those first 2 weeks. Which leads me to my thoughts. And the main topic I'm talking about is, that I want to stress with everybody out there is, look, you need to know your clients. It has always been said that real estate is hyper local. And I think in today's economic environment, we can all say that nothing could be further from the truth, right? It is a hyper-local environment. But the biggest thing is, I got a lot of people and a lot of agents that I talk to, they're very focused on what are interest rates doing? What is the Fed going to do? What is it? Because that's where their client's headspace is at. But what I'm saying is, I think the best way for real estate agent in today's market to be very successful is to get to know their clients much better. And what do I mean by that? I mean, diving in to know exactly what their needs and wants are, exactly where they want to buy. Because let's just step back and take a look, right? 2 years ago, you could breathe on somebody. And the market was so hot all across the country. It didn't matter where you were. If you listed a house, you were telling your seller, hey, I'll be back in about 8 hours. I'll have 20 plus offers. The sign won't even be in the yard. We're going to sell this thing. And if you were on the buy side working with buyers, you were like, you better be bringing your checkbook because you're going to need to go well over asking price if you want to win this bid. Obviously, things have drastically changed. Now, I would say that's drastically changed for 80, 90% of the market. I think there's still some markets that are really hot. But when I say know your clients, you got to know where your clients want to buy. The city is going to be very different than the suburbs. The suburbs are going to be very different than the outlying areas where you have the tract builders. So for example, if you're out there competing against new builds, whether you're on the buy side or the sell side, you're going to be looking at discounted rates, buy downs for interest rates, literally either 2-1, 3-1 buy downs, or literally just buying down that rate. And if you are a seller, that is your competition. You need to know that for your clients. If you're in suburbs, it really seems to be driven right now by schools. The school district. If you're in a hot school district, a top school district, regardless of where you are across the country, those markets seem to be doing still very well, right? And it's also location, location, location. If you have a view or something like that. And then if you're in a city environment, also on the suburb area, is it oversaturated at this time? Are there multiple listings? Has there been too many new builds, right? A lot of spec home builders. Is there too many in that area? And that's what's driving down essentially maybe price. Houses are sitting on the market longer. You need to specifically know what it is your client and their need is, and maybe your client and what house they're selling and exactly where it is and all those details in order to go to market. And then if you're on the downtown side, right, it's all about views. It's about public transportation. It's about views. It's also about building amenities. So being really clear and concise about what it is about your client, what is your client base, so that you can dive in and really get to know the sectors and where your clients are playing, I think is much better than playing on the peripheral of, well, here's where I think rates are going to go. I don't want to have this discussion with the client. Start talking a lot more about the nitty gritty for what it is exactly they're looking for. Because the reality is this, the best time to buy or sell your house or your client to buy or sell their house is when they're ready. So it doesn't matter where interest rates are. It doesn't matter where the economy is, so to speak. If they're ready, that is the best time, because they'll be truly engaged and they need, it's not a want, they need to make a move. And lastly, I'm going to touch on this NAR Sense, and I call it NAR Sense in NAR SENSE, NAR Sense. And there's so many people that seem to be negative on what's going to go on. And the biggest thing, I think the takeaway is the most recent development that I've seen is now a federal judge has come in and said that the DOJ, Department of Justice, can reopen its investigation into NAR. Anytime the government gets involved in really anything, it's never a good thing, especially, as it's political potentially, or trying to dissolve a business, the perception that it's not fair to a certain group or a minority or a race. It just gets really dicey. And now that the DOJ has come back in, I'm here to tell you first and foremost, I know July is coming up very quickly, but frankly, we really have no idea how the hell this thing is going to pan out. If they're reopening an investigation, who knows what they're going to change from what's already been established. But really quickly, here's my 2 cents of what I think. Number one, I pointed it out weeks ago. Change is good. Change is never a bad thing, in my opinion. You just need to be the consummate professional and figure out how you're going to live in that new environment. So I think that number one, that's great. I also think that this is going to weed out about 10 to 20% of all the agents across the United States. And it's going to do it for 2 reasons. You're going to have, number one, the part-time people are going to say, nah, I'm good. All this change gives me a little angst, hasta. The other part is going to be people that just fear confrontation. What do I mean by that? Buyer's agents now, you have to go and have a conversation with your potential client. I'm going to drive you around. I'm going to do this. You need to justify your compensation. That creates confrontation. That creates you having to have a conversation with that potential buyer before you begin to show them homes. I would say 80-90% of the agents don't do that. That is going to weed out just a drastic amount of people. The third thing, the thinning of the herd is going to be a great thing for the rest of us that stick it out. Anytime that we have less people in our profession that are offering their services to our client base, it's obviously a good thing. It's a numbers game. Everything has always been a numbers game, and I think that's a good thing. The other thing that I'm looking for from the DOJ, or how this is going to pan out, is what is Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA, all the programs out there, how are they going to look at buyer agent commissions as it pertains to seller concessions? Are we going to have to eat up seller concessions to compensate buyer's agents? And if we do, who does it hurt the most? Low-income buyers? Hurts people that are first-time home buyers, or people that have very little money to actually put into the deal to buy a home. So what's that going to do? We're going to see real estate numbers for the next couple years, I think, suffer once this gets implemented. And I don't mean suffer in a bad way. I just think change, obviously, as good as I've already said it's going to be, is going to put the skids on some people. I think, overall, I think we're going to see numbers down slightly from where they have historically been. Even as we come out of this higher interest rate environment, I think it's going to get a little bit, dicey, and I think the numbers are going to be down a little bit. And then lastly, I think you're going to see more discount brokers out there. I think you're going to see a lot of agents embrace the change. They're going to look at it as opportunity. They're going to look at it as, how can I creatively offer the same services that a potential 3% buyer's agent is going to be, offer it at a discount, do it more effectively, use AI, and so on and so forth. So one of the things I mentioned to an agent yesterday, and I mentioned to my team as well, is, look, while you're working with your clients now or for the last 6 months, pick up the phone. Hey, what were the top 3 things you liked most that I offered throughout that transaction, right? What are the top 3? Out of these 7 possibly, or 8 things that I offered, what were the 3 that you liked? You know what those are going to become? Your top 3 selling points as you move forward in asking for your buyer's agent commission. Those are going to be your 3 branding items that you're going to want to go to market with, that are differentiators for you, that your clients you already know, love, and like about you. All right, everybody. I know it's always a lot to digest. I'm always long-winded. I always have a lot to say. Hopefully, this is helpful to you. I am around all the time. I am full of ideas. I love talking shop. You want to grab a coffee, jump on the phone. Can I help a client? Run a buy down scenario for you. Talk about credit scores. Can I help somebody with poor credit? I got all those wonderful things. I've been doing this for over 20 years. So please don't hesitate to just reach out to me and ask me anything that you may have a question on. All right. Have a great week. Happy selling out there. Happy Eclipse Day. And I will talk to you on Friday. Cheers.